Hello and welcome to Turning Point Church. Over the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at some snappy sayings. Now, I started off with a saying from Corrie Ten Boom: never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. And then Judith looked at a saying from Oscar Wilde: to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist, that's all. And then last week, David looked at Aristotle's Satir and Sinatra, doobie doobie doo. And this week, I'd like to share a saying that's been attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, but I first came across it watching Kung Fu Panda. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift, which is why it's called the present. Now, another way of saying that is found in an anonymous quote, which says, cherish your yesterdays, dream your tomorrows, and live your todays. I wonder how you would feel about living every day like it's your last, doing things that are important to you and things that you enjoy. I'm not talking about living in fear that today could be your last day. I'm talking about making the most of each day so that we find ourselves living a life we love. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, Judith talked about the 86,400 seconds that we have each day to live our lives with. But each day, that balance gets taken back down to zero. And I'm sure that we all want to make the most of the time that we have. But if we think that we have endless days left, we might procrastinate when it comes to doing those things that are important and enjoyable to us. That's why living every day like it's your last isn't a super dramatic or morbid idea. It's more the idea that it's not the years in your life, but the life in your years that counts. Now, you might have seen the film The Bucket List with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, but I also really like a film starring Queen Latifah called Last Holiday. It's a brilliant romantic comedy. You might think it's just super cheesy, but it's about a shy woman who is told that she has 3 weeks to live. So she sells all her possessions and decides to live it up on one last holiday. She does everything that she's previously been too scared or too busy to do or try. And she says to herself, next time, laugh more, love more, and don't be so afraid. None of us can spend all of our days just doing what we want to do. We all have responsibilities. But if we don't add in things that we enjoy, life can be bland. It's a bit like adding seasoning to our food. Salt, pepper, herbs and spices. They're not essential, but they help with the flavour and the enjoyment of a meal, turning the practical necessity of nutrition into what can be an incredibly pleasant and enjoyable experience. Adding some seasoning or some spice to your life doesn't mean that you have to do big stuff that requires a lot of time and money. But instead of finding reasons why you can't do something you really enjoy, why not find ways that you can? Now, I'm sure many of us love to travel and discovering and exploring places that are new to us. But surely the last 18 months have shown us that we don't have to leave the country, we don't even have to leave our own county to find and enjoy new places, walks or experiences. I don't want to find myself watching others having fun and then sound like Eeyore moaning, oh, I've always wanted to do that. I guess I never will. When we do that, we can feel deprived and we can end up resenting our lives rather than loving them. Now, I really would love to go to New Zealand, but clearly that is not going to be possible or practical right now. But I can say I am going to go to New Zealand one day because hope energises us and gives us something to look forward to. The Apostle Paul wrote, who hopes for what they already have? If we already have something, we don't need to hope for it. But if we look forward to something we don't yet have, we must wait patiently and confidently. We are saved by our faith and by God's grace, not through our hope, but hope accompanies salvation. I wonder if you've sat and thought that Jesus came so that we might have a life that we love and so that we could enjoy that life. And part of enjoyment is laughter. God has given us the capacity to laugh. And I know we also have capacity to cry, and there are of course times when that's the appropriate thing to do. Jesus wept, but he also laughed. And I wonder if you've ever considered laughing as a wise and healthy thing to do, because laughter brings health to our bodies and to our souls. Laughter releases endorphins which can relieve pain and create a sense of well-being. Laughter raises our energy levels, relieves tension, and can give us a more positive attitude. Laughter can increase our antibodies and strengthen our immune system, and a hearty belly laugh causes you to inhale more oxygen and stimulates your heart and circulation. It's like internal aerobic exercise, and laughter is contagious. One way to laugh more is to be less serious about some things, and especially to take ourselves less seriously. Although, of course, we need to deal with many serious situations in our lives, there are other things that we can just get too intense and serious about. A few weeks ago, we were trying to put somebody else's cat, into a cat carrier, and Simon had got hold of it, this cute little bundle of fluff, and she just flicked her hips and flew, chunks of fluff deploying from either side like chaff and flare out of an aeroplane. Now, I just started laughing. Simon might have got a tiny bit scratched, but the cat was just being a cat, and the pressure of trying to look after someone else's pet could have built up this really tense situation. But if you took half a step back, it was really funny. So learning to laugh at ourselves a bit, instead of mentally beating ourselves up, can make life a lot more fun. And as well as doing stuff that can bring enjoyment and laughter, the other thing that I'd like to encourage us all to do is celebrate more. You don't need to wait for some major accomplishment or milestone to celebrate, but they are absolutely worth celebrating too. And we send love and hugs to Jerry and Anne, who celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary yesterday. And I'd also like to send our deepest congratulations to Anne and Terence, who were married yesterday. We can also celebrate, you see, small victories too. Celebration doesn't need to be expensive or expansive, because celebration is more of an attitude than an event. In order to live a life you love, don't keep a running inventory of all the things you think are wrong with you or with your life. We have this strong tendency to focus on how far we've still got to go instead of looking and celebrating how far we've come. So we need to fight against that tendency, which is why I love this verse. What the eye sees is better than craving what the soul desires. As David said last week, King Solomon, who wrote Ecclesiastes, had really committed to figuring out how he could most enjoy life. He had tried everything, and most of it hadn't led to happiness or enjoyment. Now, Ecclesiastes comes from the Greek word for teacher, so with his life largely behind him, Solomon was taking stock of his experiences, of the human capacity for wisdom, human enterprise, labouring to master the world, to break through human limitations and to master our own destiny. And Solomon concluded that living with faith in God and God's purposes was the only thing that made sense. We need to just accept our own limitations. There is only one God, and it's not me. Our role is to be patient and to enjoy a life with God. As a life not centred on God, it's going to lack purpose and meaning. But with God, all of life and all of God's other gifts can be received and used and enjoyed to the full. As Solomon said, it's much better to enjoy what we have than to continually crave what we don't. So if we were to live every day like it was our last, I doubt that we would want it to be boring or mundane. We all seem to inherently know that enjoyment is important. So let's not postpone enjoyment and celebration until some future time. Today is a gift, so let's start making the best use of this gift that is the present. God is always ready to deal with our limitations, not because he'll love us any more if we have less flaws, but because he loves us too much to leave us where we are. So when God's Spirit gently shows you one of your limitations, and I'm sure you've probably only got one, maximum of two, God isn't bringing those to mind so that we can dwell on them and become discouraged. It's God's act of love for us and his way to help us grow and mature. If we'll let him, he'll also show us how far we've progressed on our journey with him. And as my son reminded me the other day, life is not about the destination or even the journey. Life is about who you travel with. And if you travel through life with Jesus, he will show you life in all its fullness. Lewis Boone said, "The saddest summary of a life contains three descriptions: could have, might have, and should have." So many people are sadly living a could have, might have, should have life, but that doesn't have to be the case. You can live a life you love, maximising every moment, those 86,000 seconds, a life full of celebration and laughter. So be sure to let the people you love know how you feel about them. Don't set yourself up for regret, and determine now not to have a could have, might have, should have life, so that you can live a life that says, I loved, I laughed, and I lived fully.